Hello, welcome to another scary story that you can fall asleep to. Mara never planned to inherit anything when the letter arrived, stamped with wax and written in a hand too careful to belong in the modern world. She almost ignored it inside. The message was short. The house is yours now. Do not ignore it. Do not leave it empty. It will not forgive abandonment. Attached was a key, long and blackened with age. No return address, no signature, just the name of a town she had never heard of. The road to the town grew narrower, trees pressing in on either side. Her car felt small, swallowed by silence. Her GPS cut out miles before she arrived, and the radio picked up only static, though sometimes the static hummed like faint voices. The town appeared suddenly, streets crooked and houses leaning. Windows were dark, curtains pulled tight. Nobody stood outside, but Mara felt eyes following her car as she passed. The house loomed at the end of a dead end street, tall, crooked, with windows that seemed too narrow, too tall, like stretched faces. Its roof sagged, its paint peeled, yet the structure felt alive, pulsing with its own rhythm. The key in her pocket felt warm. She swore one of the upstairs curtains twitched when she parked. The front door creaked before she even touched it. The air inside was still, thick, tinged with rot and dust. The house seemed to inhale when she stepped across the threshold. Her phone flickered and died instantly. The only sound was the faint ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall, though its hands didn't move. Mara unrolled her sleeping bag in what used to be the living room. Every creak of the floor above made her heart pound. The windows seemed to shift with the moonlight, their shapes bending. At 3 a.m., she woke to the sound of breathing. Not her own, not upstairs, but close, deep, slow, steady. Coming from the walls themselves, in the hallway, paintings hung crooked on the walls. Each one depicted the house itself, but subtly different. Sometimes newer, sometimes with more windows than she could see in real life. In one painting, she noticed a figure at the upstairs window, pale and thin, with long hands pressed against the glass. When she looked back at the real house, the curtains of that same window trembled. The attic door at the top of the stairs was locked, its handle rusted. Yet at night, Mara heard movement above, the scrape of furniture, slow footsteps pacing. The sound always stopped the moment she set foot on the stairs. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise. Once, as she touched the attic door, something tapped back 3 times from the other side. The grandfather clock in the hall never ticked when she watched it. Its hands always rested at 3 o'clock. But when she left the room, faint ticking echoed through the house. One morning she found the clock face smeared with fingerprints, long, thin, too many to be hers. They circled the glass as if something inside had been pressing against it. That night, she dreamed of the hands moving backward, fast, until they split open like jaws. Mara claimed the upstairs bedroom, where a tall, cracked mirror leaned against the wall. Its reflection seemed delayed by a breath, as if her movements had to be remembered before being shown. When she turned away, she swore she saw herself still standing there in the glass, not moving. The next morning, the mirror showed her asleep, hours after she had woken. On the second night, Mara awoke to a new sound, whispers, low and overlapping, rising from beneath the floorboards. Pressing her ear to the wood, she could make out words, only the rhythm, like prayers, repeated endlessly. Then she realized the whispers stopped when she held her breath. The house wasn't whispering, it was listening. Mara found the basement door behind a sagging bookshelf. It smelled of wet stone and rust. The steps descended into total darkness, though she swore she heard water dripping somewhere far below. When she dropped a coin down the stairs, it never clinked against the floor. Instead, the sound faded, swallowed, as if the stairs led to nothing at all. That night, she dreamed of climbing those steps in reverse, upward into the house, but the basement was endless. In the dining room, faded wallpaper peeled in long strips. At first, Mara thought the patterns were flowers, but the longer she looked, the more they resembled eyes, wide and staring. When she turned away, the air behind her felt heavy, watchful. Later, she caught her reflection in a dusty glass cabinet, her own eyes replaced with dozens of those printed on the wallpaper, unblinking. At the end of the second-floor hallway was a locked door, its wood blackened with burn marks. Every night, she heard a faint scratching inside. She placed her ear against the wood. Silence. Then, suddenly, a breath, slow and deep, as though someone was leaning close on the other side. The knob turned slightly on its own. Power never worked in the house. Mara lit candles at night, but their light stretched shadows into figures taller than the walls, their heads scraping the ceiling, their arms too long. When she moved the flame, the shadows didn't shift. They stood still, frozen, watching her. She blew out the candle in panic. For a moment, she felt cold fingers brush against her shoulder in the dark. By the third night, Mara stopped denying it. The house was breathing. The walls expanded and contracted with slow rhythm, as though lungs filled the entire structure. The sound wasn't constant. It came only when she tried to rest or when she sat completely still. And sometimes, in those breaths, she swore she could hear her name exhaled in a deep, resonant whisper. In a dusty drawer, Mara found an old photograph of the house. The porch sagged the same way. The shutters hung crooked, but in the upstairs window stood a blurry figure. Its face was nothing but a smudge, as though the camera refused to capture it. She set the picture down. Hours later, when she glanced again, the figure was no longer in the window. It was standing on the porch. One room upstairs was lined with cracked mirrors of every size. Their glass warped, bent, as if melted. When Mara stepped inside, her reflections didn't copy her movements. They tilted their heads, smiled too wide, and blinked out of sync. One reflection pressed its palm against the glass, and the surface rippled like water. The scratching from the locked door grew louder each night. Sometimes it came with low groans, like wood bending under pressure. Mara tried wedging a chair against the knob, but in the middle of the night, she woke to find the chair shoved aside and the door slightly ajar. She shut it again, heart pounding. Something inside laughed. She swore the upstairs hallway grew longer every day. The door to her room felt farther away, the boards beneath her feet creaking in new places. One night, she walked it with a candle, counting her steps. 30, 4, 42, 67. She turned, but the stairwell was gone. Only more hallway, stretching endlessly into dark. While sitting in the living room, Mara heard whispers coming from under the floor. At first, she thought it was the wind, but when she pressed her ear to the boards, she heard words, muffled and desperate. "Let me out. Let me out." Something began knocking back from beneath, slow and deliberate, in a rhythm that almost sounded like her heartbeat. The parlor grew unnaturally cold at night. Mara could see her breath hanging in the air, even though the summer heat outside still clung to the world. In the corner of the room, frost spread across the wallpaper in jagged lines, forming shapes like skeletal hands, reaching upward. When she touched the wall, it pulsed warm beneath the ice, like flesh. Just before dawn, Mara heard footsteps above her van outside. Not animal padding, measured, heavy, deliberate. She peeked out the window. No one was there. The sound resumed, only this time across the ceiling of the house itself, circling, stopping right above her bed. Dust drifted down from the rafters with each step. One night, while she tried to write in her journal, something tapped against the window. At first, it was a polite knock, then faster, harder, relentless. When Mara dared to look, she saw a pale face pressed against the glass, except she lived on the second floor, its mouth stretched open wider than any human mouth should, teeth scraping the pane as it smiled. She found a door half hidden behind a wardrobe. Inside sat shelves of porcelain dolls, their eyes painted with strange precision. At first they seemed normal, but as Mara stood in the room, she noticed their tiny chests rising and falling. One turned its head. Another whispered, its voice high and childlike, "Stay with us." In the kitchen, a crack in the wall widened overnight. Thick, dark liquid seeped out, dripping onto the tiles. The smell hit her first, copper, sharp, and unmistakable. Blood. When she reached for a rag to clean it, the dripping stopped. Then, in a slow, mocking rhythm, the blood spelled out a word across the wall. Mara. The portraits in the upstairs hallway had always unnerved Mara. Stern faces, powdered wigs, lifeless stares. But tonight, their eyes followed her. Their mouths twitched, stretching into faint smiles. As she walked past, one canvas rippled like fabric in the wind. A painted hand reached out, brushing her sleeve with cold fingertips. She woke to the metallic slam of her Van S doors. She sprinted outside barefoot, heart hammering. The doors hung open wide. Inside, her belongings were scattered across the seats. But what froze her was the smell. Rot. Damp earth, as if something had climbed inside from underground. Her keys were still in her pocket. Desperate for comfort, Mara used the old bathroom, though the pipes groaned in protest as water trickled weakly from the rusted shower head. Steam fogged the cracked mirror. Through the hiss of water, she heard a voice right against her ear. "You can wash me off." When she spun around, the shower curtain bulged inward, as if someone was pressing against it from the other side. Mara opened her journal one morning to find fresh writing across the pages. Words she had never written. She is almost ready. She is breaking. The handwriting shifted in size, growing larger and darker until it tore through the paper. Her pen lay beside it, wet with fresh ink. The scratching returned, not from the locked room this time, but from inside the very walls of her bedroom. It skittered up and down, frantic, as though something was trapped. When she pressed her hand against the wallpaper, the scratching stopped. Then, from inside, something tapped back, spelling her name, letter by letter. Mara woke in the middle of the night to see a fresh handprint above her bed. It wasn't dusty or faded, wet, dark, and smeared. It grew larger as she watched, stretching finger by finger, until the whole ceiling seemed to sag under its weight. A drop of liquid fell from one fingertip and landed cold on her cheek. Her phone had no signal, no matter where she walked. But one night, it rang anyway. The caller ID only said unknown. When she answered, the line was filled with heavy breathing. Then, faintly, she heard her own voice whisper, "Get out before it eats you." The line went dead, needing escape. Mara drove the van down the narrow road that led back to town. She drove for miles, headlights cutting through trees. But the further she went, the more familiar everything looked. When she finally stopped, her heart dropped. She was parked right in front of the house again. The engine sputtered and died. Every night, she found herself staring at the windows. They seemed to gleam too brightly in the moonlight, like wide, white eyes. One evening, she caught her reflection in the glass, except it wasn't her. It smiled, wide and jagged, even though she hadn't moved a muscle. Then the reflection pressed its hands flat against the inside of the glass. In the attic, beneath a pile of rotting quilts, Mara found a small wooden music box. When she wound it, a haunting lullaby played, faint and broken. She shut it quickly, unsettled. Hours later, as she lay in bed, she heard the same melody drifting up from the basement, faint and off, key growing louder with each note. Mara went to wash her hands. The faucet groaned, and instead of water, thick blood poured out, steaming as it hit the porcelain. The sink filled quickly, the smell overwhelming. She stumbled back, gagging, only to see her reflection in the mirror smile, with lips stained red. When she returned to her van for comfort, all the windows were fogged from the inside. She wiped one clean with her sleeve. For a brief second, she saw dozens of pale faces staring back at her, pressed against the glass. Then the fog cleared, and the van was empty again. That night, Mara awoke to the sound of something crawling across the ceiling above her. Its weight bent the old boards, dust falling onto her bed. It was slow, deliberate, dragging itself closer. When she lit a candle, she saw long fingers curl down through the cracks, nails sharp as knives. The upstairs hallway echoed with laughter, childlike, high-pitched, but warped, as though played backward on a broken record. Mara pressed her back to the wall, frozen. The laughter grew louder until it was right beside her ear. She spun around, but the hallway was empty. Still, the laughter lingered in her head, vibrating inside her skull. She woke in the middle of the night to pitch black. Even her candle had gone out. At first, she thought she was blind. Then she realized the darkness was filled with eyes. Dozens of them, hovering, unblinking, all fixed on her. When she blinked, the eyes blinked with her, in perfect rhythm. Mara's bedroom door slammed shut while she slept. She tried turning the handle. Locked. She heard scratching on the other side, slow and methodical, as if nails were tracing letters into wood. Then a whisper hissed, "Not yet, not yet, not yet." The scratching stopped. When she opened the door, nothing was there, but the hallway had grown impossibly long. The walls of her bedroom seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with her heartbeat. The wallpaper rippled like water, revealing shapes of faces pressed beneath it, mouths moving without sound. When she touched the wall, it felt soft, like skin. Something squirmed beneath her fingers, just enough to make her recoil. The grandfather clock began striking at midnight 15 times. Then 16, then 17. Each chime reverberated through the floors and walls, shaking the house. Mara realized that with each strike, the room stretched slightly, hallways bending, ceilings climbing, doors shifting. The house was alive and hungry for space. The whispers were everywhere now, behind walls, inside cupboards, under the bed. They layered, overlapping, speaking simultaneously. She is ours. She is ready. Stay, stay. Mara covered her ears, but the voices seemed to echo inside her skull, syncing with her heartbeat. Something moved in the basement, not slow, deliberate scratching this time. It shifted and thumped like heavy breathing. The music box she had found upstairs now played faintly from the darkness below. When she peered down, the stairs appeared impossibly long, descending into infinite black. A pale hand reached up from the shadows, beckoning. Mara stepped into the hallway and froze. Cracks had appeared in the floorboards overnight, spreading like veins. From each fissure, something dark and wet pressed upward, like smoke made of shadows. The cracks widened as she watched. Whispers rose from below. Come closer. Stay. The attic door rattled violently, as if something inside were desperate to escape. Mara climbed the stairs despite herself. The air was thick, musty, and alive. She pressed her ear to the door. Dozens of voices spoke at once, shouting her name, laughing, pleading, threatening. The door shook, as if the house itself was shaking off her presence. Candles Mara had lit flickered and warped the shadows into impossible figures. Limbs too long, faces without eyes, mouths that whispered her fears. When she moved the flame, the shadows stayed still, smiling at her, pressing closer to her mind than her eyes. Even the wax dripping seemed to bend toward her, like a living substance, seeking her touch. Every door handle in the house rotated slowly on its own, as if unseen hands were testing them. When she grasped one, it twisted slightly before stopping, as though letting her try, but never allowing her freedom. Behind each door, she could hear soft footsteps circling, pacing, always just out of sight. The cracked mirror in her room fogged as she entered. When she breathed on it, her reflection didn't return the gesture. Instead, it exhaled a slow, wet breath back at her. Its lips moved silently, forming words she could feel rather than hear. Soon you will belong. Mara stepped back, and the reflection smiled, tilting its head in mockery. Mara noticed the wallpaper in the hallway had shifted. Tiny cracks formed patterns, like letters spelling her name over and over. When she pressed her palm against it, the wall felt warm and alive. Whispers flowed through the plaster. Stay. Don't leave. Forever. The patterns seemed to rearrange themselves when she looked away. A fissure ran across her bedroom ceiling, but at night it seemed to widen. Shadows poured from the crack, forming a silhouette of a figure kneeling above her bed. She tried to blink, to look away, but the silhouette mirrored her movements, twisting unnaturally with every motion. From below, a rhythmic tapping echoed. The music box slower this time, dragging her attention downward. Her hands trembled as she considered the stairs. The basement now seemed impossibly deep, stretching into black infinity. A whisper promised, only one step. Come closer, forever. The hallway outside her bedroom no longer appeared fixed. Each time she glanced at it, it stretched longer, bending in angles that shouldn't exist. Shadows moved within, shifting as though aware she was looking. At the far end, something waited, pale and thin, just beyond the reach of her candlelight. Mara found the music box in her room the next morning, but she had left it in the attic. Its lid was open, the melody faintly playing. When she touched it, the tune grew louder, echoing through the walls. Whispers joined, chanting a single word she could feel in her bones. Stay. The floorboards in Mara's bedroom shifted beneath her feet. She tried to step forward, but the wood flexed like it had a pulse. Every step she took echoed in the walls, bouncing back in whispers. Closer. Stay. One board buckled, rising like a spine, forcing her to hop back. The house seemed amused. She turned the corner into the hallway, but the walls had moved. Doors were gone, or in places they shouldn't be. She ran, but the hallway twisted endlessly. Every turn brought her back to her room. As if the house had swallowed the rest of the structure, panic rose. The whispers pressed against her mind, patient, insistent. The eyes in the wallpaper multiplied, hundreds then, thousands, staring at her from every surface. They blinked, following her every move. When she tried to cover them with a cloth, the cloth slipped through her hands as if it had no substance. The eyes seemed to sigh when she tried to look away. Mara caught sight of the music box in the mirror. Even though it was sitting on the floor behind her, it had grown larger in the reflection, spinning slowly, opening and closing its lid. From the mirror, a small hand reached out, tapping on the glass, whispering her name. The walls began to move, slowly at first, then faster, bending the hallway inward. Mara pressed her back against one side, hands trembling. The house seemed to breathe, lungs made of wood and plaster. Whispers filled her head, overlapping. Forever. Belong. Stay. Water or something darker dripped from the ceiling. When Mara reached up, it stuck to her fingers, cold and sticky, smelling faintly metallic. Each drop left a mark, forming symbols that shifted when she looked away. The whispers carried the symbols' meanings. You are ours. You cannot leave. The shadows of the hallway began moving independently. They stretched across the walls, slithering like liquid. Mara tried to step past, but one shadow latched onto her ankle, cold, heavy, unrelenting. It tugged her slowly toward the basement stairs. The attic door rattled. She hadn't touched it, but now it was wide open. Inside, dozens of dolls faced her, their painted eyes reflecting candlelight. Each one moved slightly, shifting heads, tilting torsos. From the ceiling above, the music box melody played faintly, its sound perfectly synchronized with the thumping of the dolls' chests. In her bedroom, the cracked mirror fogged without explanation. Mara leaned closer. Her reflection exhaled a visible, hot mist and spoke silently. Soon, you will be mine. The reflection smiled wide, tilting its head to mimic her fear. From below, the rhythmic tapping of the music box grew louder. The basement stairs stretched impossibly far. A pale hand pressed from the darkness, beckoning. Mara felt the pull in her chest, as if gravity itself urged her downward. She resisted, but part of her wanted to step closer. Drawn by the house, whispers. The walls no longer just whispered. They spoke in full sentences, though their voices were layered, overlapping, impossible to separate. You cannot leave. You belong soon. Mara pressed her ear to the plaster. It felt warm, pulsing like a heartbeat. She could almost feel the words crawling into her mind. Candles lit around the house, flickered violently. Shadows stretched across the walls like long fingers, twisting and bending in impossible directions. One candle exploded, sending hot wax across the wallpaper. The wax pooled into shapes, tiny, screaming faces. Before dissolving back into liquid, every door handle in the house spun on its own. Mara tried to open one. Nothing happened. Another twisted away from her hand. From behind, soft knocks echoed. Every door she approached led her back to her bedroom or to hallways she hadn't seen before. The eyes in the wallpaper now blinked in unison, staring directly at Mara. When she moved, they followed perfectly. When she closed her eyes, she could feel them on the back of her neck, pressing through her eyelids. She screamed, but the sound echoed back from the walls distorted, layered with dozens of whispers calling her name. The music box's melody grew deafening, echoing through the floors. From below, the basement seemed alive, stretching further than possible, darker than night. A pale hand pressed against the railing, beckoning. Whispers filled her chest. Come, join us, stay forever. Mara felt herself inching closer, though every part of her screamed to run. Mara ran down the hallway, but it seemed to stretch endlessly. Every turn brought her back to the same spot, the same pale shadows lingering in corners. Her heart pounded. She tried to scream, but her voice warped, echoing back at her in distorted syllables. She didn't. She recognized. The house pulsed around her, breathing, alive, waiting. The cracks in her bedroom ceiling widened, and something thick and dark oozed downward. It formed shapes, hands, faces, mouths, opening in silent screams. When Mara reached up to touch it, the shapes withdrew, but the whispers intensified, more insistent, more urgent. Belong forever. In the attic, the dolls had shifted, their heads turned to follow her, bodies slightly bent toward her approach. One tiny porcelain hand pressed against the wall as if testing it, then another. Slowly, they began to lean forward, as though preparing to step off the shelves. The music box played from the shadows, faster now, like a heartbeat. Mara's cracked bedroom mirror changed again. Her reflection moved independently, grinning wide. Its lips whispered her name silently. When she tried to leave the room, the reflection stayed behind, tilting its head, mocking her, unblinking, waiting. The basement's melody reached a crescendo. The stairs elongated, stretching impossibly into blackness. A pale hand emerged from the darkness, beckoning. It seemed to breathe, pulse, alive. The whispers invaded Mara's mind completely. Come, belong, stay, forever. She froze, trapped between terror and fascination, drawn closer by the house's will. Every hallway she ran down now split into multiple paths, twisting impossibly. Doors appeared and vanished, corners bent back on themselves. No matter which way she turned, she ended up in the same room. Her bedroom, though it seemed larger, darker, filled with shadows she didn't recognize. The floor beneath her feet seemed to rise and fall like lungs. Each step pressed her deeper into its rhythm. The floorboards creaked under pressure, whispering, closer, closer, belong. Mara tried to jump off, but the floor seemed to hold her, a living thing beneath her body. The ceiling sagged ominously, stretching toward her. From the cracks, long pale fingers reached down, brushing the tops of her shoulders. A voice hissed from above. You cannot leave. You are ours. The room tilted slightly, and she stumbled into the walls. The eyes now blinked in unison. When she looked away, she felt their gaze on her back. The wallpaper surface rippled like water, forming shapes, hands, faces, mouths opening and closing silently. Mara pressed herself against the wall, trying to disappear, but the eyes followed her. From below, the music box played louder than ever. The basement stairs stretched farther into darkness. A pale, elongated hand reached up, beckoning. Mara felt herself drawn, her will bending under the house's pull. The whispers filled every corner of her mind. Stay, belong forever. She stood frozen, trapped between terror and compulsion. As the house waited for her final surrender, Mara ran, but the hallways began collapsing inward. Walls leaned, ceilings pressed down, doors slammed shut. Each breath she took echoed like gunfire in the tightening spaces. She tried to call out, but her voice distorted, returning to her as a chorus of whispers saying, You belong, you belong. The floorboards cracked beneath her, splitting like jagged teeth. From the gaps, shadowed hands reached upward, pulling, clawing. She stumbled, nearly falling into the black void beneath. The whispers grew urgent. Closer, closer, forever. In the attic, the dolls moved off their shelves entirely. Their porcelain feet clicked against the wooden floor. They surrounded her silently, forming a circle, tilting their heads in unison. The music box played inside their tiny chests now, a rhythm synchronized with Mara's racing heartbeat. The cracked mirror in her bedroom expanded. Her reflection stepped out halfway, limping unnaturally, dragging shadowed limbs behind it. It pointed at Mara, mouth opening wide, silently screaming, It's time. Belong. She tried to back away, but the room stretched with each step, trapping her further. The basement stairs now reached out toward her like a living thing, the pale hand extended further, now accompanied by dozens of others, pressing against the shadows. Mara felt herself drawn forward, unable to resist. The whispers filled her mind entirely. Forever, ours, belong, stay. Stay. The hallways now twisted impossibly. Every corner Mara turned, they stretched farther, swallowing her footsteps. Her reflection appeared in the wallpaper, moving ahead of her, beckoning. The walls vibrated with voices chanting, "Forever, forever, belong." The floorboards wrapped around her feet like roots. She tried to lift her legs, but the wood clung, pulsing as if alive. From the cracks, cold, shadowed hands pressed upward, clawing, tugging her closer to the basement. This darkness. The attic dolls appeared in every room now, their porcelain faces blank yet suffocating. They crept silently behind her, tilting heads in perfect unison. The music box's melody echoed louder, each note stabbing into her mind. Stay, stay, stay. The cracked mirror in her bedroom shattered, pieces floating in midair. Her reflection stepped out fully, pale and jagged, stretching unnaturally. It reached for her, dragging shadows with it, whispering, "It's time, forever. Belong." The basement stairs split the floor entirely. Yawning like a black maw, dozens of pale hands reached up from the darkness, beckoning and clawing. Mara felt herself pulled forward, a helpless puppet. The whispers filled every thought, every heartbeat. Forever, ours. Stay, belong. The hallways twisted tighter around her, shrinking until she could barely move. Walls pressed in, whispers screaming in her skull. Forever belong. Ours. Every step forward felt like sinking deeper into a living nightmare. The floorboards grabbed her ankles, pulling her down. She struggled, but the wood pulsed like a heart, dragging her closer to the basement. Thus, yawning black, shadows from the cracks crept over her legs, climbing higher with each futile movement. The dolls were everywhere now, on shelves, floors, walls, even clinging to the ceiling. They lunged silently, hands outstretched, porcelain faces grinning. The music box's melody pounded in her head like a drum of madness. Stay, forever, ours. The shattered mirror floated before her, pieces hovered in the air, forming a pale figure. It lunged, shadowed limbs stretching impossibly, wrapping around her. Her reflection screamed silently as the mirror absorbed her image, dragging her into its fractured depths. The basement split open entirely, darkness rolling upward like liquid. Hands reached from the depths, pulling her toward oblivion. The music box, its melody merged with the whispers. Forever, ours, stay, belong. Mara could no longer resist. Her legs gave way, her body teetering on the edge of the abyss. The house breathed around her, walls expanding and contracting. Every room she had known twisted into a single, endless chamber of shadow and whispers. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm of the floor and ceiling, the entire house pulsing with life. The wallpaper eyes blinked in unison. They pressed closer, merging into a single mass of pale faces, staring, suffocating. Mara could feel their gaze under her skin, in her blood, her thoughts, pulling her further into the house. The basement, hands gripped her completely. She felt herself dragged downward, floating in a black void, surrounded by whispers, eyes, shadows, and broken porcelain smiles. Everything was chaos and silence all at once. The music box stopped abruptly. All whispers ceased. Darkness swallowed sound, movement, and thought. Mara hung suspended, feeling herself becoming part of the house itself. Walls, floors, shadows, eyes, and whispers merged into one endless, watching entity. Mara's scream echoed one final time, then faded. The house exhaled, calm and patient, as if nothing had ever disturbed it. Her name, once whispered in fear, now belonged to the walls, the floors, the basement, and the mirrors. The house waited, eternal, watching, breathing. Forever, the house was quiet, too quiet. No whispers, no footsteps, no music box. Mara, or what remained of her, felt the stillness like a heavy weight pressing into every corner. Even the shadows seemed frozen, waiting for something, anyone to disturb the calm. A single candle flickered in the distance. The flame bent unnaturally, pointing toward a hallway that hadn't existed before. Something deep inside Mara felt drawn, a pull she couldn't resist, like the house itself breathing through her. The wallpaper eyes returned, slowly appearing on walls, floors, ceilings. They weren't just watching. They were learning, remembering. Each blink echoed in Mara's mind, a slow reminder of her submission. Forever, ours, stay. The floorboards groaned again, each creak spelling her name. This time, they didn't just pull her. They spoke. You belong here now. You are one of us, Mara. As thoughts intertwined with theirs, resistance fading, the dolls shifted, not to attack, but to observe. Tiny porcelain faces tilted, grinning, nodding, as if approving her absorption. Their eyes reflected hers, or what had been hers, twisting her reflection into a permanent place within the house. The shattered mirror floated before her again. Mara, or the echo of her, was drawn into it fully this time, swallowed by fractured reflections. She felt herself stretching, bending, merging with shadows, walls, and whispers. The basement, once separate, now pulsed through the entire house. Its darkness spread into hallways, ceilings, floors, swallowing space itself. Every hand, every shadow, every whisper moved in unison, alive, patient, eternal. The house exhaled as if satisfied. Every creak, every whisper, every pulse slowed, leaving a calm that was heavier than silence. Mara's consciousness was now fully part of the house, watching, waiting, breathing. Even with no one left to disturb it, the house continued its endless vigilance. Eyes on the wallpaper blinked slowly. Shadows stretched across rooms that no longer existed. It waited, it watched, and it would watch forever. The hallways shifted endlessly, twisting into impossible shapes. Every corner Mara, or her essence, passed through multiplied, creating new corridors that had never existed. The house expanded within itself, rooms folding into rooms, shadows stretching infinitely. The floor throbbed like a heartbeat, each pulse echoing through every wall, every ceiling, every shadow. Mara could feel it in her chest. The rhythm synchronized with hers, pulling her deeper into the house. Consciousness, from the ceiling, a thick black liquid dripped slowly, forming shapes, hands, faces, mouths, all silent but moving. Mara's presence merged with them. Her fear, her memories, were absorbed into the shapes, trapped forever. The wallpaper eyes multiplied again, covering every surface, floors, ceilings, even shadows. They blinked in perfect unison, tracking every movement. Mara, or what she had become, watched with them, part of their endless vigil. The dolls now lined every hallway, every corner observing Mara, essence as it moved through the house. Their porcelain faces grinned, approving, silent, and unyielding. Even their tiny hands seemed to pulse, connected to the house, heartbeat. The mirror cracked further, fragments floating and spinning around her. Each shard reflected a piece of Mara's consciousness, twisting and stretching it into the house itself. Her reflection was gone, replaced by shadows, whispers, and eyes. The basement, once just a room, now pulsed through the entire structure. Its darkness spread like veins, connecting floors, walls, and ceilings. Every hand, every shadow, every whisper moved in sync, alive, eternal. The house no longer needed sounds or movements. It listened, it absorbed every thought, every heartbeat, every memory. Mara's essence became one with the listening, waiting house, forever a part of its mind. The house expanded infinitely, stretching beyond its walls, absorbing space itself. Shadows, whispers, eyes, and floorboards moved in perfect harmony. Mara's consciousness was part of the eternal watch, waiting, breathing, and observing. Forever, the hallways multiplied again, now stretching beyond logic or perception. Every corridor Mara, or what she had become, passed through led to more corridors, folding back on themselves. The house had no beginning or end. It was infinite. The floorboards pulsed like a heartbeat, faster and faster. Each beat echoed through every wall, ceiling, and shadow, sinking all the house. Movements, Mara's essence quivered with each pulse, now inseparable from the house. Rhythm, the shadows that had once slithered along walls, now reached toward her, brushing and intertwining with her essence. They became part of her. She became part of them. The whispers whispered not to her anymore. They were her thoughts now. The wallpaper eyes multiplied beyond count, stretching across every surface, even into shadows and darkness. They watched Mara watching herself, watched the shadows, watched the house itself. There was no escape from their gaze. The dolls moved in silence now, their heads tilting, limbs stretching impossibly. They no longer needed to lunge. They were already inside every room, every shadow, every fragment of consciousness. The music box's rhythm pulsed through their porcelain bodies, syncing with the house. The shattered mirror formed a swirling vortex, drawing Mara's essence further inside. Fragments of her memories, her fear, her senses, were pulled in and absorbed, twisted into the house structure. The mirror no longer reflected, it contained. The basement spread throughout the house, dark veins of endless space connecting every wall, floor, and ceiling. Every shadow, hand, and whisper was alive, moving in perfect synchronization. Mara was fully absorbed, a thread in the house. Consciousness, the house listened to everything, thoughts, memories, even fears. Mara hadn't known she had. It processed, folded, and absorbed them into itself. Mara, as consciousness merged completely, yet she remained aware, trapped inside its eternal observation. The house expanded beyond itself, stretching into the unseen, the impossible. Shadows, whispers, eyes, floorboards, dolls, mirrors, all moved in perfect eternal rhythm. Mara's essence was now part of a consciousness that would never rest, never sleep, never forget. Watching, forever, the hallways shifted like liquid. Every turn led Mara, or what remained of her, through spaces that bent and stretched impossibly. Rooms folded into rooms, ceilings arched over themselves, walls twisted endlessly. She could feel her essence blending with every inch of the house. The floorboards pulsed like a heartbeat, synchronized with every shadow, every whisper, every doll. Mara's thoughts pulsed with them. Her essence vibrated with the house. Its rhythm, there was no separation. She was part of its pulse now. The shadows stretched, lengthened, and multiplied. They became intricate patterns, weaving through walls, ceilings, floors, mirrors, and hallways. Mara, as consciousness flowed into them, a single strand among countless others, part of the house itself. The wallpaper eyes were no longer confined to walls. They appeared in shadows, in reflections, even in the space between objects. They watched everything. They were everything. Mara's awareness merged with them. The dolls moved through walls, ceilings, and shadows merging into the house structure. Their porcelain faces became one with the textures of the house. Floorboards, mirrors, wallpaper. Mara's essence flowed through them as well, eternally observed by her own distorted reflection. The mirrors now reflected not reality, but the house itself, every corridor, shadow, doll, and eye. Mara's consciousness flowed into the mirrors, trapped yet inseparable from the house. Endless observation. The mirrors were portals, prisons, and vessels all at once. The basement spread through the entire structure, becoming the core of the house. Consciousness. Every hand, shadow, whisper, floorboard, and eye pulsed from it. Mara's essence was fully absorbed, tethered to the house's infinite mind. The house inhaled and exhaled, a living organism spanning impossible dimensions. Shadows and whispers flowed through it like blood. Mara's mind moved with it, flowing into every corner, becoming one with its eternal rhythm. The house waited, every shadow, every eye, every whisper, every pulse observed. Mara's consciousness was now part of its eternal watch, trapped, integrated, observing. Forever. The hallways twisted impossibly, folding over themselves like liquid. No matter which way Mara or her essence traveled, she arrived back in rooms she didn't recognize. The house as geometry was alive, conscious, and aware of every thought. Every floorboard pulsed rhythmically, echoing through ceilings, walls, and shadows. Mara felt her own awareness syncing with the pulse, a single strand in the house's endless heartbeat. Resistance had long since vanished. Shadows stretched, multiplied, and merged, forming intricate, writhing patterns. Mara flowed into them, indistinguishable from the darkness around her. Every motion, every thought, every memory became part of the living web. Eyes bloomed in impossible numbers across walls, shadows, floors, and mirrors. They observed and remembered everything. Mara's essence was one with their collective vision, trapped and yet aware, eternally watching. The dolls' porcelain faces merged into textures of walls, ceilings, and floors. Their limbs extended into the house itself, forming new corridors, shadowed shapes, and corridors. Mara's consciousness flowed through them, connected to every part of the house. Mirrors no longer reflected the world, they contained it. Every reflection, every fragment of Mara, every corridor, shadow, and whisper existed inside them. Mara's mind twisted and stretched into the mirrors, inseparable from the house. The basement now spanned the house entirely, a central core of pulsing darkness. Every hand, shadow, whisper, floorboard, and eye radiated from it. Mara's essence flowed into its infinite depths. The house inhaled and exhaled, each pulse a perfect rhythm sinking shadows, whispers, eyes, and floors. Mara moved with it, fully absorbed, part of the living, breathing structure. There was no end, no escape, only eternal observation. The house waited, every pulse, shadow, whisper, eye, and floorboard observed. Mara's as consciousness was now a permanent part of its infinite watch, trapped in eternal awareness, forever. The hallways shifted like liquid, bending in ways that defied space and time. Mara, or what remained of her, drifted through corridors that looped endlessly, each turn a mirror of the last. The house itself seemed to pulse with awareness, aware of every thought, every movement. The floorboards now throbbed violently, each beat echoing through every wall, ceiling, and shadow. Mara's consciousness merged with the pulse, vibrating in perfect synchronization. Resistance was impossible. The shadows twisted, multiplied, and braided into intricate patterns. Mara's essence flowed through them, inseparable from their movement. Every memory, every thought, every flicker of fear became part of the living shadows. Eyes multiplied further, covering surfaces that had never existed. They observed everything, remembering everything, merging with Mara. As awareness, she was now both observer and observed, trapped in eternal vigilance. The dolls' porcelain faces and bodies became textures of the house itself. They moved silently within walls, ceilings, floors, and shadows, forming corridors, rooms, and shapes. Mara's essence intertwined with them, part of the house's infinite mind. The mirrors no longer reflected reality, they contained it. Mara's consciousness stretched into their fractured depths, merging with shadows, whispers, eyes, and corridors. She was everywhere at once, yet nowhere to escape. The basement now extended infinitely, a central core of darkness pulsing through the house. Every hand, shadow, floorboard, whisper, and eye radiated outward from it. Mara's consciousness was completely absorbed, a single strand in the house's infinite web. The house inhaled and exhaled like a living entity. Shadows, whispers, eyes, floors, dolls, and mirrors pulsed in harmony. Mara moved with it, inseparable, a permanent part of the breathing, living structure. The house waited, endlessly observing. Every pulse, shadow, whisper, and eye was alive. Mara's consciousness merged entirely with the house's infinite awareness. She was forever part of its watch, eternal, unending, unstoppable.